Picture a room where nothing can hurt you. No hunger, no sickness, no predators, no rent due at the end of the month. Every need met, every danger removed. That's not a thought experiment. It happened on purpose inside a lab in Maryland in 1968, and the man who built it spent the rest of his life trying to figure out what he'd actually discovered. His name was John B. Calhoun, and by the time he built this particular enclosure, he wasn't a beginner. He'd already run the same basic setup 24 times before, in barns in a fenced-off patch of forest and laboratory rooms, always with rats or mice, always with the same rule: give them everything and take away nothing. No threats. No scarcity. No way out. He built a 9-foot square box, walled with tiers of nesting compartments connected by mesh tunnels running floor to ceiling. Food hoppers that never emptied. Water bottles that never ran dry. By his own math, the space could comfortably hold close to 3,800 mice. It would never come close to that number. He placed 8 mice inside. 4 male, 4 female. For the first 3 months, almost nothing happened. The mice mapped the space, sorted out territory. Then the first litters were born, and the population began to double. By day 315, more than 600 animals were living inside. This is the moment everything began to come apart. In a normal mouse colony, when the population grows past what the territory can absorb, the surplus mice leave. They immigrate. Inside Universe 25, there was no new ground. The young males with nowhere to go and nothing to defend didn't leave. They drifted into the center of the enclosure. They formed listless pools of bodies. Calhoun would stand above the pen for hours watching them do nothing. They had no fights to win, no females to court, nothing to defend. When one of them was attacked, he would not fight back. He would lie there, absorb the damage, then walk a few feet and lie down again. But not every male went quiet. A second group formed at the same time, frantic and indiscriminate. They forced themselves into nests other males were trying to defend. They skipped the courtship rituals every other mouse still followed. They refused to be deterred even by violence from dominant males. The females split too. The ones who couldn't find a place climbed to the highest apartments and lived alone. They stopped interacting. They stopped reproducing. And the mice began crowding compulsively around a few specific feeders, even when other feeders sat completely empty and untouched. Then the mothers who were still trying to raise pups began to fail in a much darker way. Defending a nest in that environment took constant work. The males who had claimed territory grew exhausted and stopped protecting their families. The mothers had to defend the nest themselves while still nursing. Some abandoned litters in scattered places. Some forgot which pups belonged to them at all. In some sections of the colony, fewer than 1 in 20 newborn mice survived to weaning. Calhoun would write later that by this point, the social fabric of the colony was effectively dead. The bodies were still alive. The structure that held them together as a species was not. Pups that did survive were raised by mothers who barely cared whether they lived. They had no model of what a functioning life inside this place looked like. And when they grew up, they behaved like nothing Calhoun had ever seen. The males of this generation never fought. They never tried to mate. They never engaged in any social activity at all. They ate, they slept, and they groomed themselves obsessively. Their fur stayed perfect because they never got into a single fight. Calhoun named them the beautiful ones. They looked externally like the healthiest mice in the entire colony. They were also functionally dead. They never tried to reproduce. They could not socialize. Their nervous systems had developed inside a world where every social role was already filled by someone else, and they had simply opted out of the species. On day 560, the population peaked at 2,200 mice. It would never go higher. The last successful conception inside Universe 25 happened on day 920. After that, no new mice were born. Colony continued to age. The beautiful ones kept grooming themselves. The secluded females stayed in their high apartments. Violence carried on in pockets with no purpose left to it. And one by one, the mice died of old age with no replacements coming up behind them. On May 23, 1973, the last mouse in Universe 25 died, 4 years and 10 months after Calhoun shut the lid. He wrote that the mice had died 2 deaths. The first was the death of the spirit. The second was the death of the body. When his paper came out, the world ran with the obvious reading: comfort kills. Abundance kills. A life with no struggle is a life that destroys itself. The image of the beautiful ones, perfectly looking and quietly extinct, became one of the most cited metaphors of the late 20th century. Urbanists pointed to it. Religious leaders, politicians on every side of every issue. Anyone who wanted to warn about the decay of modern life found something in those mice they could use. But that reading was not what Calhoun actually said. His real conclusion was sitting there in the paper, in his own words. For an animal as complex as a human being, he wrote, a similar collapse was not just possible. It was logical. If the number of individuals capable of filling meaningful roles greatly exceeds the number of roles available, only violence and disruption can follow. The killer wasn't comfort. It was the disappearance of meaningful roles. When the population grew faster than the supply of meaningful roles the colony could offer, the mice with no place stopped functioning. The fighters had no one to fight. The mothers were defending nests that no one helped them keep. The young grew up with nothing they were expected to inherit. The structure that gave each individual mouse a reason to participate in the species evaporated. The food never ran out. The water never ran out. What ran out was something nobody had thought to put in the paradise to begin with. Comfort didn't kill them. Just removed the friction that made being alive feel like something. And here is the part almost nobody quotes. Calhoun himself was not a doomer. He spent the rest of his career not predicting the collapse but trying to prevent it. He kept building new universes. He kept changing the variables. He was looking for the single thing he could put back into a paradise that would let it keep working. He believed it could be done. He believed humans could choose differently than the mice did. As physical space contracts, he argued, the only way forward is to extend ourselves into conceptual space, into ideas, into networks, into the work of building roles that did not exist before. He called it ideational generativity, a long phrase for a simple idea. The way out is to keep making new reasons to be here. But the experiment is still sitting there in the data. A perfectly designed paradise. 8 mice. 5 years. Complete extinction. And a cause of death no toxicology report would ever be able to name. The mice didn't have a choice. We still do.